This is where the draft got really interesting. Ace Bailey, who has had a hell of a couple of weeks, the Rutgers freshman, elected not to work out for any teams. I believe that was the first time ever that a U.S.-born player, a U.S. prospect, has not worked out for any teams before the draft. It was believed coming into the draft that Bailey wanted to stay in kind of that Northeast corridor. He was looking at Washington. He was looking at Brooklyn. Those two teams drafted 6th and 8th. He did not work out for the Utah Jazz. Jonathan Givony over at ESPN, who's the most plugged-in guy that I know on these college prospects, he said that Utah was not his preferred destination or one of his preferred destinations. But Utah said, you know what? I don't give a shit. I don't care. I am drafting Ace Bailey because we need someone like Ace Bailey. What did you think of how Bailey handled the draft process and Utah taking him kind of sight unseen in this draft?
It's one thing not to go work out for people, and his agent's point was, hey, he worked out for everyone at the combine, and everyone got the chance to talk to him.
Which his agent should know is not the same thing.
Which is definitely not the same thing. It's another thing to cancel on teams, which is what he did, schedule workouts and then cancel them. It's another thing to have it out there that, oh, I prefer this destination, I prefer that destination. And by the way, if that's bad reporting, you could come out and say, hey, hi, I'm Ace Bailey. I'm on social media. I'm telling you guys right now, I have a direct line to all of you people, which didn't exist 20 years ago. That is not true. I don't have that. Nobody ever did that. So that makes me tend to believe that, in fact, he did have preferred destinations, which is not something I think sits well in this league when you're a rookie. So I don't think it was good advice. I'm not sure how staying in the Northeast qualifies to also have the Pelicans on your list, which was one of his, quote, preferred destinations.
I mean, I guess they're like, when it comes to Western Conference teams, they're one of the most easternmost Western Conference teams. I don't know. I'm just making it up at that point.
Absolutely no sense. I mean, one thing I read, and again, because we didn't hear from him directly on this, setting any sort of record straight, one thing I read reporting was, oh, he wants to where he can just jack up a lot of shots. I mean, I don't know.
What's wrong with Utah? He can jack up a lot of shots there.
Again, a lot of it does. It's the same thing with the Northeast corridor. A lot of it doesn't make sense when you put it all together. Again, he could be a great kid, a great leader, and this could end up being a blip that we all laugh about later. I'm not willing to sentence him to anything based on getting advice from an agent on your way into the draft. But I do think that he now has a little bit extra to prove to people about being a good teammate, about being a leader, about being someone who is hungry and a sponge and ready to learn and ready to play your role, and all the things that are valued for rookies in this league, because he's walking in with not a great reputation because of the last 4 to 6 weeks.
This did feel kind of amateurish how it was all handled. Mm-hmm. And we have to acknowledge that Ace Bailey has a young agent, a new agent that he works with as his representation. He's not represented by a Rich Paul or a Bill Duffy or a Jeff Schwartz, the powerhouse agents that do stuff like this. Look, maneuvering to one team is not a new concept. I mean, guys get promises all the time. They shut down workouts and they try to steer themselves to that destination. But how Ace Bailey did it felt kind of ham-handed, and it felt kind of amateurish.
Also, it's one thing to steer your way in certain circumstances. The bottom line is the NBA, that team that drafts you has your right for 7 years. 7 years. So it's not like you can go be a problem somewhere. A veteran on an expiring contract, you can guide yourself to certain teams. Or a guy like Kevin Durant, who the question was, would he sign an extension and therefore should we step up for them? You can guide yourself to certain teams, even if technically you don't have a no-trade clause or you don't control your own rights. You have influence. With these kids coming into the draft, they have no influence. That team has your rights for 7 years. So steering yourself as a rookie, I just think it's a mistake. I think that it's a reputation mistake. I think it's a mistake he can 100% get over, but I just think the bar is a little higher for him now to prove himself.
Yeah, and he hasn't done anything catastrophic here. Mm-hmm. And even in his interviews, he didn't really say a heck of a lot, but he didn't say, I don't want to go to Utah. So that he's got that going for him.
That would be awkward.
I think once he gets to Utah and starts working with that staff, led by Will Hardy, who's one of the best head coaches, I think, in the NBA. I think he's going to really like the circumstances that he's in. And I'll give Utah a lot of credit here. The easy thing to do would have been to pass on Ace Bailey and draft someone like, say, Jeremiah Fears. Like, they drafted a point guard later in the draft anyway. They could have taken the 18-year-old Fears, good prospect out of Oklahoma. A lot of people I've talked to think he has a really high upside 2-3 years down the road. That would have been probably the easy thing to do. Ace Bailey, though, is the big swing. When you look at the Jazz roster, like, who are the shot makers there? They just don't have them. Like, Lauri Markkanen is kind of that guy, but who knows how long Lauri Markkanen is for Utah. They dangled him in trade talks last year, almost had a deal done with Golden State. Maybe they do it again this summer because Lauri, even though he's not old, doesn't really match the timeline of this team, the Keontae Georges and Isaiah Colliers and all the guys that they've drafted over the last couple of years. They need a bona fide shot maker. And Ace Bailey showed me last year at Rutgers he is a bona fide shot maker. Like, you can kind of squint, Rachel, and see those shades of Kevin Durant. Like, you can see it. Like, he's a couple inches shorter, maybe not quite as dynamic, but I can see the shot making there. He shoots the three really fluently. He shoots it. Yeah, it's just everything about his offensive game just looks like it's going to progress really well. He was just a freshman last year. You give this guy a couple of years, I can see him becoming an all-star level scorer in the NBA. We'll see how the rest of his game develops. I don't know. But I can see this guy becoming that kind of scorer, and that's exactly what Utah needs. They have been desperate to go and get that type of player. And look, I don't know exactly, if we're being honest, who is making the final decisions in Utah right now. Austin Ainge was just hired as the president of basketball operations. Justin Zanuck is still there. Danny Ainge, I don't know what he's doing between, 18 holes at Pebble Beach. Like, is he having the final say on these draft picks? But something about Danny Ainge, and look, Austin to a degree too, because he was part of this. When the Celtics drafted Jason Tatum back in 2017, Jason Tatum did not want to go to Boston. Jason Tatum was hoping that he slipped one more pick and went to the Phoenix Suns. Danny Ainge, who had already done a deal, already did the Markelle Fultz deal, moved out of the first overall pick to get to 3, didn't give a damn. Was like, you know what? Doesn't want to play here? I don't care. You're coming to play here. I had that same kind of vibe with Ace Bailey. Who knows if it's going to work out, but the Tatum thing worked out pretty well, and now here he is with maybe a Tatum-esque type of player who can be the face of your franchise.
Yeah. And look, for them, it's a win because, as you say, he's evaluated as a top 3 talent, and they got him sitting lower on the board. This is a team that felt like they got not cheated out of the lottery system. I don't want to use that word, but sort of, the ultimate bad luck and possibly an idea of, hey, maybe we need to fix the lottery system. Utah and Washington have been beating the drum for that the most, and yet they didn't make it into that top 3, and they got a top 3 talent. So let's see what he can do. Again, I just think he's got to prove himself a little bit more in the off-court areas than he would have had to 6 weeks ago, but I also think he can do it.